Welcome back to the console room. Today we're going to be looking at JuJutsu Kaisen Chapter 133, the Shibuya Incident. What part are we at now? Part 50.
Yeah.
So, quick little summary with Mahito's defeat last week at the hands of Itadori, and Itadori's very, very aggressive stance on "I'll kill you no matter what you do." We get a little bit of a flashback/flash around to a couple of different times before the moment we're at currently. We get a little bit of insight into what Toto was doing before he met up with Itadori to take on Mahito. We find Panda rescuing one of the fellow sorcerers that's been in this fight, who claims that if Gojo stays captured and they can't save him, that he agrees and will be on the side against Yuji Itadori and making sure Yuji gets the death sentence. Then we transition to two characters over in Malaysia, and they're having a secret conversation that we need a little bit more details on. We also see the blood user. He's curled up in a corner, and he doesn't know what he is or why he's seeing Itadori, which is kind of interesting. So there's going to be some more explanation there. And then the ultimate part of the chapter is Geto is here, and we see a couple of his new abilities, which are crazy weird. One's kind of like a catfish. The other is some sort of like crazy, I don't know, armored centipede thing. And he reveals that he's able to, like, similarly to Geto, consume all of these. And then finally, to kind of end the chapter on a very surprise note, he uses Geto's ability to turn Mahito into one of those cursed orbs that he consumes to gain their ability that we saw during that flashback with Gojo and them from a number of years ago when they were just up and coming. So with that kind of like brief little summary out of the way, let's get it going. What did you think? I was a little confused by the flashbacks, just to start off, to be honest, because the time gets listed on the third page. So to see Toto there and have both hands like oh no, it doesn't. My bad. Sorry.
It is on the first page.
Yeah, my bad. In the first panel. Sorry.
But if I'm being honest, I know what you mean, because it was like different times. So I could understand like this is like before, the end all, like not the end all be all, but like what happened with the other characters and stuff like that. Because he has been listing times when like Yuji's fighting or other moments. Because I believe I can't remember when it started, but I remember when it was like 9:00, I think, when the incident started or something like that. I know it was nighttime, but and like, so we have been seeing different times, but this chapter is a little not confusing, but I was just like, yeah, it's a little juggle, especially the confusing part that got me, cause Toto, okay, he arrived, we see him arrive before, right? So we see his side of the thing. And we also see the repercussions of like Shibuya, where what's his name took over Yuji's body against yeah, against the Flame Mountain curse. What's his name? Jugo, yeah.
Jogo, or however you pronounce it, yeah.
Yeah. So you do see the outcome of that, which is actually pretty like devastating. But aside from that, yeah, it was a little clutter when it comes to the timing. I mean, I guess that's important too. But what the other thing was confusing to me was the brother and sister characters, where we see them, right? So I remember, I guess they left and they quickly went to Malaysia, like I don't know how fast. You know what I mean? Because remember, they did had a fight in this arc when they fought in the train station, or like the train tracks.
Is that them though?
Yeah, it is them. That's the one that's like obsessed with money. She works for the high school, or she's and like her little
that
and
makes
her little
no sense then, does it?
And her little brother's like it's like a little brother complex or whatever you want to call it. So, and I was a little confused. Maybe I had to go back a few chapters because it has been a while since I seen them. But I do remember when they were fighting. They were fighting against like a curse or something like that. Like that was pretty strong. But then you see her abilities, and I forgot what it was, honestly. But she's very money driven, and yeah. What confused me was like, okay, is this after the fight or before? Like she's going off to Japan, and if it's after, I'm a little confused too, because I'm like, if it's I can understand if it's after, because she does look like, okay, she probably has like a scrape from the fight, right? So I don't, because she has like a little bandage. So I'm like, is it after? So it's a little confusing to me when it comes to that tense.
I agree.
And then with the And lastly, going over like just one more thing, going over your quick summary, to like one of the Womb brothers, right? And he sees Yuji. That was that's interesting. Like I don't know where that's going.
Right? Because it's obviously in his mind, right? Because that
Yeah.
was kind of if we rewind back to that previous incident, right, where they actually
Hmm.
fought like in the bathroom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He has kind of like a similar vision, right, where they're all sitting at that table together, and he imagines
Oh
like
yeah, you're right.
Yuji being one of his brothers, right? Like, oh, we could have been friends in a different kind of situation. So I'm I'm kind of very interested by this because what I'm almost wondering is, do you think maybe somehow, without even intentionally knowing, Itadori has maybe some sort of ability that's become latent where he brings the curse back to like more of its humane side? Because this guy is like a cursed individual, like a cursed like creature, right?
Well,
So
yeah, because he's like him and his brothers were like they're like really strong curses, but they were gonna be born, but then they like I guess abstracted them from the woman if I remember correctly,
yeah,
and then
so
yeah,
they're
it's weird.
right. So like the kind of so I'm almost wondering if yeah, Itadori's got some sort of innate ability maybe to help humanize or return humanity to curses because it's really confusing because he says, I have to go. Yuji Itadori, what are you? I have to know. Progression, I kind of weird as well that it's Itadori's, we'll say,
Mhm.
Ab's dream that's asking him, are you unwell? Which doesn't really make sense, right? So I don't know,
Yeah,
man. That was weird. Any
not
other
really.
thoughts
I
on that?
mean, I just want to make sure he won that fight against Yuji, right? Unless Yuji kind of because it was a tough fight for Yuji when they both were facing each other, and then towards the black bathroom.
No, didn't I'm pretty sure Yuji wins that.
I think Yuji loses because he gets passed out,
Oh, and
and
he
then
turns
Jogo
into Suku now, right? Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah. The
no,
fingers
but
get
then
forced.
Jogo goes into the bathroom and gives him all the fingers and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Right.
But
Yeah.
I guess one thing I could say about this one brother right here, the blood control guy. We seen another person that could do that ability. So it's kind of like interesting. Like, is maybe he's like he's like an ancestor to like one of the family groups. You know what I mean?
That's a good point because
Because
during
yeah,
the whole class, like the whole
Goodwill,
event
man.
that's going to be appearing in the anime soon. Yeah,
Yeah,
the one guy he uses his blood to
yeah, it's same
manipulate things,
technique.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's an interesting thought as well. Yeah, maybe there is a sister, or there's a lot of shady dealings going on with that side of the family though. So I'm almost wondering if maybe there's some sort of plot thread that we're unaware of currently where like Geto, because technically he was from one of those families as well, right? Like his previous thing. So I'm wondering if he was able to manipulate something and maybe using either one of the bodies from that family or something like that and using it as like a vessel for a cursed object, kind of similarly to Yuji, right? I'm not
Mhm.
really sure, but just, some food for thought and some possible ideas to deal with later on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like all I can think of, like, I mean, ever since he got introduced and then he used his blood abilities, I'm like, oh, he's then related to that family that could, all the other guy that could use the ability, and it makes sense because remember they're like extracted, wombs, right?
Hmm.
So to speak, right? And they've been extracted for like I forgot how many years. I think it's a couple hundred years. So yeah, it's
No,
crazy.
it's interesting. It's a very jumbled chapter, but
Mhm.
it kind of raises so many questions that, despite I guess almost the disconnect between kind of everything that's going on, it raises interesting questions, and it already starts I guess hinting to what we're going to be looking at after this incident, right? So.
Yeah. And what do you think when he was? What do you think of Ghetto when he showed up?
So I guess as we kind of we theorized last week, right? You called it for sure. Ghetto ends up killing him, right? Big spoiler, not but
Yeah.
I'm a little rattled, I guess, because that first power, I was like, no way, Yuji's dead. Like, look at that hole that
Black
gets
hole.
created in the ground, right
Yeah.
on page
Mhm.
12. It's just like, wow, he's screwed. And then he falls nowhere, and Geto is even like, oh, did you think that you fell? Well, from our angle, it just looked like you slipped. And then he combines this crazy tentacle monster with that. I mean, I think the most interesting kind of situation, or the interesting thing that comes out of this situation, is whatever's inside Geto, does it get the cursed ability of the vessel it's like inhabiting? Because as I mentioned going through the summary, when we have the flashback of Gojo and Geto as JuJutsu students, or as when they're students rather than
Mhm.
teachers or whatever he is currently, we see him do the same thing, right? Where he's got all of these different cursed beings and he turns them into those little cores and eats them, right? So I'm very surprised to see that come back, and I didn't think whatever the cursed thing that's inside of him would be able to do that. So I
I
think
mean,
for me,
yeah.
that's the biggest interesting point of this situation.
Well, like I was surprised that oh man, like look at these crazy abilities, but I wasn't surprised like oh right, he can control like curses because that is Ghetto's ability. Because you have to remember, it's it's Ghetto, but it's not. It's like someone controlling him, but it's still he acts like him essentially. And also, it makes sense because like he mentions the night parade of 100 demons. So like inherently we he already
He's related
done
to
this
that.
before.
Hmm.
So
Well, I guess my kind of question is, so how does that work? I guess because, for example, Yuji, as Gojo's mentioned previously, will eventually inherently get Sukuna's abilities, right? Due to,
yeah,
his ingestion of the fingers and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if there's kind of an inverse for
yeah,
this other
Ghetto and
situation
the other guy.
where this brain thing that's inside of Geto
Well,
is it's
yeah,
occupying his body and using it as a vessel. Does he
and
conversely
yeah.
get access to his abilities? That's the only thing.
And I think that's the difference because he's in the body where Sukuna's, I guess, so to speak, is in the soul, right? So to speak. He's like,
Yeah, kind of.
in there.
Technically speaking, yeah, they're like
Yeah.
sharing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We're like, yeah, they're sharing a body, and like this guy's just like fully control it, and we could tell Geto doesn't, there's the real one's still in there, right? Because I think when he interacted with Gojo, he was trying to like stop himself, if I
It
remember, or
is he though?
I
Like,
think
I
he
don't
is.
think so because Gojo says he killed him. He literally said like you can't be alive, right? Like I killed you already.
Yeah.
And it's
So
the moment of Gojo seeing Geto that allows him to get captured in the first place. So I don't know. We're still so out in the dark about this whole situation and
yeah.
the nature of this brain cursed creature. Um, I think what also I found very surprising about this particular chapter was Mahito. You know, for what are we at? 133 chapters. We knew this was kind of like, I'm trying to think of an equivalent in terms of evil bad guys, Sorry. So my question going back a little bit is with with Geto using Mahito as, his lieutenant or something like that. We always knew Mahito wasn't quite the
Big boss.
pinnacle, right? He wasn't on
Yeah.
the top of the food chain, but for him to so quickly get like thrown aside and turned into a core like that, I was kind of blown away, to be honest.
Same. It was just kind of interesting, and it was also I was confused, but then what he says afterwards, like I knew after all I was born of humans, so it was kind of a weird like, is that his final words? Like, well, what's up with that? I mean, will we see him again? I don't know.
I don't know. That you know what? If there was anybody who could kind of live through this situation, it would arguably be Mahito, right? Because he was born, as you mentioned, of the ugliness of humans. My, I guess, slight confusion is why did Mahito kind of dive at Geto?
Yeah, like was he gonna kill him? You know what I mean?
Yeah, or like use his soul manipulation stuff. I don't
Yeah.
know. That would like again, this was a very kind of jumbled chapter that honestly raises a heck of a lot more questions than it actually kind of answers or sets up for.
Hmm.
And I mean,
Especially the back half.
right, especially the back half. Yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, you're filling in the blanks in the earlier part of the chapter, but this is a little nuts. Um I mean, I think we're obviously going to get the big villain speech next week, right? With "Let us
Mhm.
discuss the world to come" kind of thing. But
Well, yeah.
all in all, just a confusing chapter. I think if anything, it was more to set up that Geto is truly the antagonist of this series,
Oh, for
and that
sure. Well, like,
Mahito's kind of been like a red herring to an extent so far.
oh, I agree. I mean, Geto, like, when we got revealed, like, oh, there's a thing in his head, which makes sense because we like throughout the first time we met, like, we see him, visibly, like, oh, he has stitches, he has like a,
Hmm.
and like, what's up with that? And we just thought, I mean, I just thought it was like a visual flare, or whatever. But
To
like,
be
there's
honest, I
reason.
thought it was just injured, right? Because we had
Yeah,
obviously had a time skip and the whole night parade of the 100 demons and
yeah.
stuff like that. I just assumed it was
So
an injury.
So apparently, there's a reason why visually why he's like that. Also, I mean, like I said before, I mean, we might get a big villain speech, but the way he talks about like, oh, in the Edo period, this and that, people think like there's a huge catfish underneath and he created earthquakes. I think
Hmm.
him and Sukuna are in the same era, like they're from the same era. So
Wow, that could be very interesting. That would make a lot of sense. And
yeah,
then some sort of rivalry from back then or something like that?
yep,
Or
I could
maybe they were
definitely.
partners even because he seems to be trying to the whole idea is they're trying to get Sukuna on their side, right? And turn,
Yeah.
curses into the true human beings, but I
Mhm.
don't know. Funnily enough, I guess to kind of segue there a little bit, and that's not something I see as Sukuna's motive. That,
No,
he's more of like, "Imma create chaos
I'm
for
gonna
the
do what
sake
I
of
want.
creating chaos," kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know. I don't see their missions aligning. I don't know
No,
where it's
this
gonna
guy.
go, but I
I
don't
mean,
see it
Sukuna
aligning.
wants chaos. This guy wants chaos control. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a fair way to phrase it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, to be honest, I'm not really sure what we're gonna see next week other than the villain speech. Are we gonna get a little bit more, fill-ins on
The
some
other
of the other things
characters.
that we've seen? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. But, this is clearly kind of the climax of this arc. We thought it was the Mojito fight, but it's kind of definitely this. So we'll have to see what's gonna happen. Like
Mhm.
the chances of releasing Gojo Sensei are, kind of slim to none, and with how beat up Itadori just got, Slim just left town. So
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the next chapter. Yeah, this one was a little weird, especially like I want to say like maybe 2 pages with the brother and sister. I'm like, okay, that's kind of why bring that up. But other than that, it was okay. Yeah, it does bring up a lot of more questions and like what we're gonna see with the big bad, and what his discussion probably hopefully we'll learn more about him, because there is still again we mentioned before. I mean, just look what he could do against Mahito, who Itadori had so much trouble with. So yeah, I think that's all I could really say about the chapter.
yeah, okay, that's cool. Let's end it there then, and we'll switch gears and go over to let's go to Build King.